So again, like I uploaded a couple of those videos that you guys saw, like the earlier ones, so you can go back and watch those. Let's just take a look at number 5, okay? So Joe went to a hobby shop and bought 2 model sports cars at $8.95 each, and some paints. He spent a total of $23.65. What was the cost of the paints? Okay. Does anybody have, like, I don't know, any idea as to where we're at? Like, how do we do this? It's a little bit different. It's weird talking to screens and not being able to, like, pick up on people, whether or not they know answers. This is a little bit trickier too. Like, we can do the one below and then come back to this, just to get people in. Right? At least, why don't we look at 6 first, and we'll come back to 5. Okay. I don't know where you guys are at. At least six is like a little more straightforward with what I'm trying to do, though. Okay. Every time you write one of these questions, or like you're looking at these, like, kind of, they're linear questions, right? So we're going to try and do a linear approach. And we did a lot of work before the break with this particular equation. Okay, so that's the equation you're trying to fill out. Okay, so for this one here, Ryan made a $3,000 down payment on a car, right? And the total cost of the car was $7,500. He made 36 equal monthly payments to pay for the car in full. How much did Ryan pay per month? Okay, so the 5 steps at the top of the sheet they're trying to get you to do is to kind of, like, underline the key information, right? And then to extract that key information and plug it into this equation so that you're able to answer the question, right? So if we identify the factor, like, we remember m is the slope or the rate, b is the starting value, x and y can change depending on the context of the question, right? So I would always start with the 2 easier ones, m and b, right? So I would say, if I'm looking at this question, so there's pretty much anywhere there's, like, a dollar amount, right? Or a number, sorry. You'd, like, underline it, right? And then how much did Ryan pay per month, okay? Those are kind of like, you're going to see, okay, I have 4 things in my equation. I'm going to probably have 4 lines in my question, right? So the total cost was $7,500, but he made 36 equal monthly payments, okay? Now I see the word per here, and I think we talked a lot about this before the break too, right? If I see this word per, that's always m, the word per. So I know in this question it's not as straightforward, like I didn't get a number for m, right? Because ultimately what it's asking for is how much did they pay per month, right? So that's going to be the m. So I want to know what m is in this particular question, right? So that's a good thing and a bad thing. It's a bad thing from the standpoint that I don't necessarily have a number to put in there, but it's a good thing from the standpoint that I at least narrowed down that I'm going to need, like, the other 3 numbers are somewhere on the page, right? So I would say the next easiest thing to do, we said, was a starting value, right? The starting value would be like, how much money did in this instance Ryan put down on the car, right? So $3,000. That's the starting value, B, right? So I'd probably say B is going to equal the $3,000, right? Because that's my starting value. And then you can start filling in the pieces, right? The total cost of the car, right? Remember, this equation is like, y represents how much of something, in this case how much money was spent, right? And then x would have represented, like, how many times would Ryan have had to have paid in order to get to 7,500, I suppose. So you could say, let x represent the number of payments, right? Because if x represents the number of payments and we multiply it by how much he paid per month, then I'm going to get a dollar amount, right? And so we know X has to be 36 as well. And Y is 7,500. Okay, so then you just take all this information that you just found out of the question and you put it into your equation over here. Right? So 7,500 is equal to, well, we don't know what M is, so it's just going to stay as M. X is going to be 36, and then plus the 3,000. And all you got to do is solve for M, like what we were doing before the break, right? So again, we're just going to bring the 3,000 over. I always deal with the easier of the two. Like addition, subtraction's easier than multiplication, division, in my mind, right? So you deal with that first because it's easier, and you bring it over. So you're going to get 7,500. So you bring it over, and when you bring it over, it becomes minus. The other way to think about that is that I subtract 3,000 from both sides, right? 3,000 minus 3,000 cancels out, but you're still left with the minus 3,000 on this side. Okay, so you're going to get 4,500 is equal to 36M. Now all you're trying to do is figure out how much did Ryan pay per month. We said that was M, so you're trying to find what M is. And so to get M by itself, I'm going to divide both sides by 36. Right? And so 4,500 divided by 36 should be a number, whatever that number might be. 125. So that must mean, therefore, Ryan okay? Is everybody okay with that? Do we have any questions? You guys can put your questions in the chat there if you want. Okay. Any questions? We're good. We can go up and take a look at 5.5's a little trickier, making me think a little bit. Okay, but again, I think what you're always trying to fill out, like a good starting point for me too, when I'm like kind of lost, is I always just write this equation down on the page. And this is what I was saying to Catherine and Zoe earlier. Right? As soon as I see that equation on the page, it starts to like, at least if I know what each of these are, at least M and B, I can look at the question and start to extract some of the information, right? And so I know from the question that the total amount of money spent was $23.65. Well, this equation expresses how much money is being spent, right? So I know from this. Okay, so even sometimes, like, if I didn't write that equation down on the sheet here, you might chase your tail and try and figure out like what's what, right? Which is kind of tough. But if you at least write the equation down, you can start to figure out what's what, right? Now here's the other piece. I'm just looking here too. The word each kind of could be replaced by the word per, I think. Right? So that's not too far of a stretch. So I'm gonna make the informed guess that that's going to be M. Right? So it's $8.95. So every car that you buy, or that Joe buys, it's gonna go up by $8.95. Well, that sounds like M, right? Now the last part here is we just got to figure out how much, or in this case, B, I think, is what we're going to try and figure out. Right? It's telling me that it's bought 2 of them. So I would think, just as I'm starting to like back figure everything out, right? This is kind of what you guys are going to try and do with each one of these questions, right? Just start with the equation and then start extracting some of the things that you know are true about that equation, right? So I think that X is going to represent the number of cars bought. In this case, or this particular question, or whatever it's saying, it could be 3, it could be 4, Joe bought 2. So I know that X is going to be equal to 2. So then you just take each of these numbers, right, and you plug them in to the equation, right? So 2365 is equal to, M is going to be 895. How many cars did he buy? He bought 2 of them. So you're going to multiply 895 times 2. And the only other thing that's in that equation that you don't know is the B value. Right? You're just going to try and solve for B. So you're going to go 23.65 is equal to, you just need 895 times 2. 1790 plus B. So all you got to do is get B by itself. This is an easy one because you've taken care of the multiplication relative to the question below. Okay, so how do I move this number from the right side over to the left side? You're just going to subtract it from both sides, right? So 2365 minus 1790 should equal B. And if we do the math on that, B should equal to 570. Okay. That must mean $5.70 on paint. Okay. I don't know how much conversation we got into before the break. I think a little bit around like lines are everywhere, in the sense that you can model most things. You can model a whole bunch of things in your life or day-to-day life using this equation, right? These are just like examples, right? But you yourselves, you guys get like looking at people to come into your house, or when you guys buy a house someday, right? You're going to look at things need to get fixed, and they're going to charge an hourly rate, right? Which is a slope, right? So for instance, if we go back up here, how much is Ben getting charged per mile? So somebody's going to come into your house and say, I'm going to charge you $75 per hour plus whatever they're going to charge you just to come out, right? So in this case, it would have been $20 just to come out to your house, right? So the idea being, if somebody quotes you, okay, this job's going to take me 10 hours, that you can come up with what the final price is going to be. And then you go to like 2 or 3 different people and get 2 or 3 different quotes, right? You can at least have some understanding as to where their quote is coming from and whether they're trying to gouge you or what, right? That's kind of the goal, or at least for me, is to kind of give you guys an opportunity to at least know when you're being taken advantage of, right? So I had somebody come in here and quote me $10,000 to do my shower, right? So it looks like I'm going to be able to do the entire bathroom myself for $5,000, right? So that's just an example of where like they're throwing that number out because people pay it, because they don't make the relationship to like blinds, right? They just don't have this understanding. So that's just kind of what I'm trying to do for you, is to make sure that like somebody doesn't come in and take advantage of you financially, right? You can at least make sense of this mathematically and figure out what they're going to charge you per hour, right? Like $10,000 for a shower, if they're only there for like 10 hours, right? They're making a lot of money. I mean, they have some costs and stuff too, right? With like materials. But if you just broke that down, like just logically, you're thinking about, okay, well, either they're going to charge me some crazy like $1,000 to come out just to like look, and then you've got $9,000. You know, if they're there for 10 hours, they're making almost $1,000 per hour. That's just the like kind of like trying to give you some context, right? And it's all lines. But you guys are going to end up in this position, so most of you, like if you get into the trades, right? Because that seems to be maybe, well, I shouldn't say that. You guys are going to be on that path, right? To go to college, or you can go to university too, right? But most tradesmen are going to be off of like an hourly rate, and like we talked about taking your car into a mechanic. How much money they're going to charge you, like $75, $100 just to take the car in, and then $75 per hour. That's a line, right? You kind of figure out, okay, if they're going to work on my car for 2 hours, you figure out how much it should cost you, right? That's what I'm just trying to do for you, right? Okay, so I'm gonna stop the video there, and then I'll upload that one too, and then you guys have, that's 4 questions off the sheet that you guys have to go off of. Okay. This is a pretty good basis too, right? Like if you can rearrange some of these equations, it's gonna be good. It's gonna benefit you, like going into some of the other stuff that we're gonna do here.